Since COVID became a factor in our lives, we've heard stories from across Canada of banks restricting people's bank accounts, employees required to provide medical information to employers, churches being closed down, and workers losing their jobs. To discuss the changes we've been seeing, I want to bring in Clay Farnswort, a former RCMP officer who is the chairman of Police on Guard for Thee. He joins me now from his home in southern Alberta. Clay, welcome to Bridge City News. So great to have you on today.
And thank you, and thank you for the opportunity for allowing me to speak today.
Absolutely. Okay, so Clay, for our viewers who may not know about your organization, can you give us a quick snapshot of what Police on Guard for Thee is?
You betcha. During the start of the pandemic, there was policemen always naturally have a curious nature about them. And there was an arrest that happened in December of 2019. 2020, of a young lad that was out skating on an outdoor rink, and Calgary police officers arrested him for not wearing a mask. The arrest became quite physical, and it was well televised. And several police officers from across Canada are going, what is going on here? And there was two of them, unbeknownst to each other in Ontario, who had witnessed this and had reached out to an MPP in Ontario saying, without knowing each other, reached out to this MPP who put them in touch with each other, and they started Police on Guard. The two founding members, there was more than them because it grew rather quickly with other policemen of the mindset, but the two founding members are still with us today, still on the board of directors. And we brought on Rocco Galati, a constitutional lawyer from the Constitutional Rights Center, and Police on Guard put out the call through social media shortly after the 20th of December in 2020, asking members, retired or active, who felt that the charter was being violated with the COVID mandates. I immediately threw my name in the hat because, like many policemen, I believe in the charter, I believe in our Constitution, and put my name in the hat. And as we evolved, I ended up in the chairman's position and have been since we became a not-for-profit. And I eat, live, and breathe what we stand for.
Okay, so what exactly do you stand for, and what do your members do exactly?
Okay, basically, while we're an information-based group, okay, we're nonpartisan. We don't support a political party one way or the other. But what we do believe in is the truth. And we believe in our charter and we believe in our Constitution. And the longer that we're diving into this and seeing the egregious policies brought forth by the governments, provincially, federally, and even at the municipal levels, that are avoiding the charter, what we're there for is to inform people that this is wrong. And it's 100% wrong. So on our website, Police on Guard, our www.policeonguard.ca, you can find all sorts of information from our legal team, Rocco Galati. He does Question Tuesdays, where you can ask him questions and we send them into Rocco and he'll answer them. We've got a wealth of information from doctors and scientists around the world. So basically what we do is we're providing information and letting you decide for yourself, okay? But we also follow the court cases across Canada routinely and write our opinion as to where they've gone wrong. Now, you got to appreciate we've got thousands of people that have sworn an oath to the charter. The mounted police swear their oath to the Queen, not to the charter. But we've sworn to uphold the laws in Canada. So you take 1,500, 2,000 policemen that have spent hours upon hours in court. And looking at this, we have a wealth of knowledge. You don't have to be a lawyer to understand the Constitution or the Charter. So we have a wealth of knowledge that we're gathering all the time and understanding where the government is going wrong. And the courts too. There's many poor court decisions not based on the Charter.
Mm-hmm. And how many members do you have? And are they all police officers?
No. With the growth of Police on Guard, and in the very beginning, what we saw was retirees coming out. And you didn't see the active duty members coming out because they were fear for their career, fear for their jobs. And
Yeah.
you know what? That is true. We have seen that so much with policemen that speak out. We've got policemen in Ontario that have been charged for speaking out in support of the charter, in support of the groups that are having legal, lawful protests. We have policemen in Alberta that were forced to either take their retirement or be charged. We have policemen in Alberta that have been charged for standing up for the charter. And this is just mind blowing. That's what they took their oath to. That's what they're supposed to protect. But if they speak out, they get run down or chastised or charged by their department. What's wrong with that picture?
It's such a shame.
It's horrible. And if you don't have policemen that are free, courageous, individual thought process people, you don't have a good police department, because you got to question things. You have to get to the bottom of this. And when you take a look at the charter, section 1 of the charter does allow for the government to supersede any of the other sections within the charter. Okay, but there is a test that the government must go through in order to strip you of your rights. A lot of people don't realize that. In fact, the vast majority of Canadians don't understand that. And that test was brought down by the Supreme Court in 1986, shortly after the charter came into effect. So this is not new. And that test is now known as the Oakes test, where there are 4 very defined elements that the government must be able to meet in order to supersede section 1 of the charter. It's never been done. The government has never tried this in court. They've never proven any of these mandates to supersede any of the other sections of the charter. Therefore, the charter is the supreme law of the land and must be followed.
Okay. Before we run out of time, there are a couple of cases, a couple of situations that we've become aware of, and I wanted to ask you about it, being a former police officer yourself. So, we started out by talking about, of course, people losing their jobs, and you were just alluding to that as well. So, and then we're also looking at the overreach of banks and schools and government branches. So, let's start with there's an alleged account of a credit union in Manitoba. Okay, so the information that we've received is that one of their clients made a purchase and the bank reported it to the police. I believe you're aware of the situation. Can you maybe describe it?
I would have to go back through the post. I believe that we actually posted on that case in our website.
Right.
And I'm currently working on some other stuff. So Jeanette, I'm sorry to remember the individual ones right now without
a little
being
too
able to go
specific
back
for
to
you. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
what it was the individual had purchased a gas mask, and somehow the credit
Is it a
union.
gas mask or a gas can? There was something.
It was
Yeah,
something like that, a
something.
gas can. Yeah.
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 But if you go back through, and there's many articles coming out now, and many I guess disclosures happening. FCC Canada, the Farm Credit Corporation of Canada, they were encouraging their employees to follow people's purchases and report after the EA ended. So there's something wrong when you have financial institutions that are going out and doing this type of stuff. And even with the EA, when you get into listening to the transcripts and talking with the lawyers involved in there, and I've had meetings with Keith Wilson, phenomenal lawyer, great man, good head on his shoulders, totally understands this. And the stuff he was able to bring out in the inquiry, and the egregious overreach of the government in doing this without proper court procedures, no warrants, no nothing. And the whole reason they went to the EA was some of the banks were encouraging it because then they could label the protesters as terrorists.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. But the sad part of this whole thing is that we had a Superior Court judge in Ontario rule that the Freedom Convoy was legal. They weren't doing anything wrong, but yet the government went to and drop the EA, which I think and I hope is going to come back to bite them because
Right.
it should have never been done.
Yeah.
There was no requirement there for the Emergencies Act. In fact, the police were working with the convoy organizers to clear the area and set up in another area. So they just wanted to enforce they wanted to flex their muscles, put it that way.
Absolutely. And I know, like, we've seen so much overreach with banks and the shutting down of bank accounts and then monitoring activity. And then in one case, there was where a credit union employee was monitoring the person's Facebook page. So, I mean, if- with yourself, from your experience in policing, is this typical practice of financial institutions to do this? I would
It
say
is
not.
totally a breach of everything within the banking acts because of privacy. It's a total breach of the charter and the laws within Canada. Financial institutions cannot do that and release that information to any authority without having the proper court documents. And so what we're seeing is people's rights being eroded at immense levels. And unfortunately, the Canadian people either aren't concerned about their rights being eroded or don't understand that their rights are being eroded and using COVID as the flag to do it. I'm sorry. You can't do that.
Clay, how does this make you feel about the direction that Canada is headed?
I am, without a better word for it, I'm sickened by it. I started my policing career prior to the charter, and I had to learn. And many members of my generation kicked garbage cans because it seemed that every time we'd come to work after a few days off, there was a new court decision that had changed our process and our procedures. So we were constantly evolving and learning and fighting the growth of the charter. But once we got all the bugs worked out of it, I became a fan of the charter. I literally did. And I understood that this was going to make us be better policemen. We couldn't shortcut things. We couldn't trample people's rights. We had to follow strict guidelines set by the courts in order to get our convictions for the bad guys. During the time in the 80s, were there criminals that walked that shouldn't have, that wouldn't have prior to the charter? Yes, because everybody was learning. The courts were learning, the lawyers were learning, and especially the enforcement agencies were learning how to make changes to comply with that. But once you did that and followed the procedures set down by the court and case law, I mean, everything is decided through case law, you had really, really strict cases that lawyers had a hard time to beat because there was no avenue to beat it anymore. So the conviction rates actually started to go up when they should have because the police were doing their job, in my mind, in my experience. Okay. So to defend the charter, you bet. I mean, I didn't think that at my age, because I retired in 2005 after 25 years, that I would ever have to come back and defend our Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
here I am.
exactly. Can you maybe talk really quickly about how Police on Guard for Thee is advocating for Canadians?
You bet. We're holding the government's feet to the flame, so to speak. We have two cases before the courts right now, one launched by Police on Guard themselves. A second one is that we spearheaded the largest federal employee lawsuit in Canadian history. We spearheaded that. We did a lot of background work for Rocco Galati. There's well over 600 plaintiffs on that case. It's currently before the court. The government tried to have it thrown out on mootness, which we're starting to see that they're saying, well, the mandates are gone. Well, the mandates aren't gone. Trust me, they're just suspended. So the courts are saying that they're throwing it out on moot. But we argued that on the 19th of January with that law case or with that civil case. And unfortunately, the decision will not be rendered for 3 months at the earliest. So we don't know if the courts will hear it, but Rocco did a fantastic job in that argument. The Crown did not do such a great job. And so we're hoping that it's going to go forward. The thing that we have to understand when these cases, when the judges are saying that it's moot and turfing it, is that we've never had a decision around the charter on what was brought forward. So without having a decision, the government can redo it. If the judges would hear these cases out and render a decision, and whether it be favorable or not, it doesn't matter, you're going to have case law. So either the government was right or the people were right. But in the cases of these judges, and in my opinion, it is nothing more than a judge not wanting to make that decision. I'm going to wash my hands of this because this is something that I don't want to be involved in. So they use the excuse, get it out of the way, but it hasn't resolved the breach of the charter. If you follow
Clay,
what I'm saying.
as we've seen all these questionable things take place over the last couple of years, I would imagine there must have been a big shift in morale among officers or among your members. What have you been hearing as feedback from these guys?
The members that are still working, especially the senior members, and I'm talking 15 years and up, that I still associate with, are extremely frustrated. They're disappointed in the government. They're disappointed in their labor representatives. They just don't understand how this can be. But the problem is that senior management has such a tight noose around their necks that when they're in uniform, they really can't say anything. But one-on-one, when I have coffee with the guys, whether they're in uniform or not, or when I attend a rally and I speak to the members one-on-one, regardless on which police force it is, that's the message I'm getting.
Clay Farnsworth of Police on Guard for Thee, thanks so much for joining us today. Unfortunately, we're out of time, but great having you on.
I loved it. Thank you ever so much. Thank you for the opportunity, and call us at any time because everything is evolving.
All the best to you and your members, Clay.
Thank you.